Hello, and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. This week, Justin Trudeau made his first visit to Thunder Bay since 2019. The Prime Minister made several stops on Thursday and capped things off with a Liberal Party fundraising event at the Valhalla Hotel. But before he gave his remarks, Trudeau spoke about former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who passed away earlier that day. Josh Morano was with Trudeau and gives us the details.
He was committed to this country, loved it with all his heart, and served it.
Brian Mulroney was Canada's 18th Prime Minister and was at the helm as the country shifted through some significant changes in national and world affairs. He passed away Thursday afternoon at the age of 84. Mulroney was in power from 1984 until 1993 and made several stops in Thunder Bay during that time span. Trudeau spoke fondly of the former PM ahead of his fundraiser in the city Thursday night, stating Mulroney helped shape Canada into what it is today.
His commitment to this country as a proud Quebecer, to bringing people together and demonstrating the impact but also the necessity of Canada on the world stage and the pride that Canadians could take in it was something that has left its mark. He shaped our past, but he shapes our present, and he will impact our future as well. He was an extraordinary statesman, and he will be deeply, deeply missed.
Trudeau reiterated his condolences in front of the nearly 100 people at this Liberal Party fundraiser, which reportedly cost attendees a steep $1,500 apiece. Later in his speech, Trudeau shifted his focus back to the people in attendance, delivering a message where he expressed the importance this region has on the country.
Because not only do we have the best educated workforce in the OECD, not only do we have the resources, we also look out for each other in a way that makes our communities more stable, our democracy stronger, and our ability to solve challenges with resilience even better.
Josh Morano, TBT News.
4 North Shore municipalities are still in the dark as to where their new amalgamated EMS bases will be or when they could be built. That's despite the fact that Superior North EMS has identified their preferred sites. EMS Chief Shane Muir addressed that issue and other topics in Nipigon at day 1 of the annual meeting of the Thunder Bay District Municipal League. Lee Noonan was there.
Superior North EMS Chief Shane Muir updated the Thunder Bay Municipal League on the state of the region's EMS service over the past year. The service saw progress on many fronts, but the plan to consolidate 4 North Shore EMS bases down to 2 is in limbo as he waits on approvals from the city of Thunder Bay.
We've identified locations that we would consider suitable. We just don't know if they're suitable to actually build on or have the proper infrastructure, access, and egress routes.
It's been more than a year since Thunder Bay City Council approved a plan to consolidate the EMS bases in Nipigon and Red Rock, as well as Scriber and Terrace Bay.
Is there a timeline? I mean, you spoke briefly to the fact that it has gone to the Realty Division, but again, timeline. That seems to be the number one question that we get.
I was really hoping that we'd be a little bit farther along, and I know some of our other city departments are incredibly swamped with the amount of work that they have to do. They have a huge workload, and they have other priorities as well. This is not something I'm letting go of, though.
In a written statement, Thunder Bay City Manager Norm Gale offered no firm timeline, but said the file is being reviewed diligently and with a sense of urgency, with meetings planned in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, there is ongoing concern about how the base consolidation will affect service in the municipalities.
Scriber and Terrace Bay have been left a number of times in code black. I'm just wondering with the consolidation of the Scriber and Terrace Bay ambulance base, how are you going to make sure we aren't left in code black anymore?
If you're talking about a service that's staffed with 1 ambulance, then as soon as they get a call, it's actually a code black situation.
Muir says recruitment and retention are the solution to avoiding code black situations where all ambulances are tied up. However, it's also the biggest challenge currently facing the service.
We are currently in a staffing crisis. We desperately need paramedic recruitment. We've created a whole digital media strategy around SNEMS, putting out its branding, putting out its culture, really trying to attract people to the northern communities to work as paramedics.
Muir did have quite a bit of good news as well, including a robust new mental health support program for paramedics and strong results from the new community paramedicine program, which he directly connects to a reduction in call volume across the district. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
It appears a February 7th vote to oust the chief of Red Rock Indian Band is now considered to have passed. That reverses the original decision and leaves Chief Marcus Hardy with just a week to respond and defend himself against the allegations. The First Nations administration issued a statement on Thursday after an emergency band meeting Tuesday night. The emergency meeting was called by former Red Rock councillor Shannon Michelle Ruth, who was one of a number of band members who contested the results of a vote to remove Hardy from office. With 91 members present at the February 7th meeting, the 57-23 vote was originally considered not to have met the 2/3 threshold needed to pass. But Michelle Ruth and others argued that not voting members should never have been considered in the overall tally.
We all came together and the majority, said that yes, the motion was incorrectly marked as defeated as per motions that we had in the past. And everybody, we had a letter of support drafted up, and a number of people signed the letter stating that that Marcus Hardy was removed at the February 7th general band meeting.
According to the statement released by administration, Hardy has been accused of misusing the band credit card. He has until March 8th to respond. After that, band members will make the final decision alongside council. In a brief statement to TBT News, Hardy says he intends to defend himself against the allegations. Ontario Provincial Police in the Northwest dealt with more cases of impaired driving and violent crime last year, according to its annual report for 2023. Regional Commander Brian McKillop sat down with TBT News to speak about their crime statistics, as well as the OPP's top priorities for this year. Jessica Clement has the details.
OPP officers in the Northwest region were very busy last year, as they made over 16,000 arrests and over 36,000 traffic stops, according to their annual report for 2023. Chief Superintendent Brian McKillop noted they saw an increase in property crimes, violent crimes, and fatal collisions, but a decrease in personal injury collisions and property damage collisions. He says what stood out to him the most was the increase in impaired driving occurrences, but increased enforcement may be part of the reason.
We led the entire province in proactive ride programs or Reduce Impaired Driving Everywhere programs throughout the festive season. So we saw a dramatic increase in impaired driving charges. So compared to 2022, where we saw 1,124 impaired driving charges across the region, we saw 1,176 across Northwest region for 2023. It's a startling and alarming statistic that people are still out there engaged in that type of problematic driving behavior.
McKillop states last year they also saw an increase in violent crimes, specifically related to intimate partner violence. He says while the incidents are alarming on their own, the increase in reported incidents shows more trust in the OPP.
We've adopted some very proactive approach and put a lot of energy into making sure we support our victims and those that are survivors of intimate partner violence. So by putting more resources into that, by having our MCERT teams out there working with victims and really leaning on our victim support networks, we're really hoping that those that are suffering from domestic violence occurrences feel more comfortable coming forward.
McKillop says this year the Northwest detachments will be working hard to keep building connections in each community, adding that the OPP's top priorities for 2024 are crime resolution, providing support for victims, and offender compliance.
It's vitally important for the success of the criminal justice system to prevent re-victimization and to prevent further victims from occurring as a result of offenders going out there and becoming more prolific, that we hold them to account in a way that supports them through the criminal justice system so they don't reoffend.
Jessica Clement, TBT News.
MPP Saul Mamakwa is calling out the Ford government this week for failing to send any cabinet ministers to an emergency meeting regarding high suicide rates in the NAN territory. Anishinaabe Nation hosted the meeting in Ottawa in late January and invited federal and provincial ministers to help address the crisis in mental health, addictions, and suicides. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu and several other federal ministers were there. NAN also invited Ontario Solicitor General Michael Kersner, Indigenous Services Minister Greg Rickford, and 2 other provincial ministers, but none of them attended.
On January 24, leadership of Anishinaabe Nation held an emergency meeting on mental health and addictions. All levels of government were invited, and the leadership from NAN were very disappointed when no one showed up from none of the Ontario ministers showed up for the meeting. Can this government let the people know why they didn't show up for the emergency meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In subsequent conversations with the Grand Chief of Anishinaabe Nation, we have reaffirmed our commitment in a couple of important categories to address the mental health crisis, both in isolated communities and as well for students attending high school in Thunder Bay. Those resources, Mr. Speaker, focus on NAN Hope, a program ran by Kiwetnak Okimakanak, an organization widely accepted and thought of as the right organization to deliver services to students on reserve and transitioning to the big city, Mr. Speaker, as well as mental health resources on the ground in Thunder Bay.
I would like to thank the government for that funding, but it was peanuts.
One of the largest mines in this region is up for sale. The Musselwhite mine is among 6 global mining operations being divested by Newmount Mining. The mine, located north of Pickle Lake, currently employs around 1,000 people. It produced over 3.5 million ounces of gold since it first opened in 1997. Newmount announced a strategy last week to sell off some of its mine holdings as a way to pay off debt. Company officials describe Musselwhite as a high-quality but non-core asset. The mine has struggled in recent years with a major fire in 2019 that destroyed its conveyor belt and halted production for months. Gold production was then hampered by the pandemic. But the mine produced 173,000 ounces of gold in 2022, the year that Musselwhite celebrated its 25th anniversary. Cat Lake First Nation has managed to stop construction of an access road to a mining site in their traditional territory, at least for now. Lawyers for Cat Lake and the MNRF and First Mining Gold met at a hearing last week, and a judge issued an interim order to halt the ministry's approval of the road. First Mining has been working to create an open-pit gold mine in Springpole Lake, located about 50 kilometers southwest of Cat Lake. First Mining has been using an ice road to bring supplies to its work camp, but in recent years there's been several incidents of vehicles breaking through the ice, causing safety concerns. The new 18-kilometer road would be connecting to an existing forestry road. The MNRF issued a construction permit on February 9th, prompting Cat Lake to take legal action. The CEO of First Mining says it's disappointing that the First Nation has chosen to oppose their activities aimed towards safety. The roadwork is now on hold until the legal challenge is fully heard in court. Coming up after this short break, Ontario forest firefighters hold a news conference with the NDP to demand better pay and health coverage. Forest firefighters are demanding the Ford government fix what they're calling a health and safety crisis. That was the focus of a news conference at Queen's Park this week, but a provincial minister insists the supports are there. Vasilios Bellos reports.
Forest firefighters say it was very fortunate that 2023 was such a slow fire season, because if it wasn't, they believe their lives would have been at great risk because of the lack of provincial supports.
Their response to our undeniable evidence? More silence, because this government doesn't think anyone is listening.
Veteran forest firefighter and Union Vice President Noah Friedman participated in a news conference Monday morning, joined by members of the NDP. Forest firefighters are calling for health supports before the start of the fire season on April 1st, wanting their line of work to receive the same presumptive cancer coverage as other firefighters. Friedman says the Ford government denies the risk that comes from their line of work.
And the presence of formaldehyde, benzene, silica, carbon monoxide, PM2.5, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, they say that it is not possible that forest firefighters can get cancer and heart disease.
The Northern NDP members that participated in the press conference also had harsh words for the province's treatment of forest firefighters.
The firefighters pay in full with their health, if not with their lives.
Whatever they say about we're adding emergency funding and so on, I'm going to say it's smoke and mirrors.
Local MPP Lise Vaugeois attended the media event and later called on the Ford government during question period at Queen's Park. Labour Minister David Piccini responded, saying his government has taken action.
Thyroid, pancreatic, esophageal, so much more. We've reformed WSIB, which, quite frankly, when that party held the balance of power and when that party was, for the one time that they'll ever have in government in Ontario, Speaker, WSIB was a mess.
The expansion of thyroid and pancreatic cancer coverage last year for firefighters did not include forest firefighters. Ontario's 2023 season saw more than 700 fires burn over 441,000 hectares of forest. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
The next day at Queen's Park, the NDP were pressing the Ford government again to give forest firefighters the same benefits as municipal fire crews. Labour Minister David Piccini seemed to open the door to the suggestion, and that prompted local MPP Lise Vaugeois to ask for firm timelines.
So I'm glad that the minister has finally decided to come to the table, even if it is late. So we need to know exactly how and when the government intends to recognize wildland fire rangers as firefighters in legislation. Legislative recognition also means supplying them with the proper PPE so that these firefighters have a chance not to become sick in the first place.
You know, I want to thank my colleague, the Minister of Labour, for his comments that have been very clear about what our plans are for the future for our wildland forest fighters. Mr. Speaker, we continue to make investments not only in our forest firefighters but in communities all throughout Ontario to keep them safe. We are making investments to make sure that our firefighters have everything they need to do the job in this province.
4 people are facing drug trafficking charges following a search of a residence in Atikokan Thursday morning. Multiple OPP units and the K-9 team were involved in the drug bust. Officers seized cocaine, crack cocaine, narcotic pills, and fentanyl, along with over $6,000 in cash and drug trafficking equipment. The drugs have an estimated street value of approximately $25,000. A man and a woman from Atikokan and 2 men from the Toronto area were charged with drug trafficking and possession of property obtained by crime. A lack of snow this season has a negative impact on winter tourism. The city of Dryden is normally a popular stop for snowmobile tourists, but they've seen a noticeable drop in visits. Despite recent snowfall, the snowmobile trails in and around Dryden are still mostly closed. And although summer and fall are the most important seasons for local tourism, Dryden Mayor Jack Harrison says snowmobilers are an important part of the hospitality industry during the leaner winter months.
Well, we're a wilderness city. Like, we have lots of people on snowmobiles. There's lots of trail riders, and it brings people into our city. You know, it's important. It's an important part of industry. I'm sure our hotel in particular, and some of our tourist camps are open in the wintertime as well for the travelers. So yeah, it's a big part of it. It's unfortunate it's not happening.
The weather this year has diminished our snowmobiling attendance almost to nothing. We were just discussing the fact that I haven't seen a snowmobile stay at the hotel or come for lunch that I can recall this year. So it's impacted it quite a lot, and we've lost a major event that we host every year.
Friedman says snowmobile traffic is important to the hotels, restaurants, and even gas stations in Dryden. He says the Best Western can normally expect 75 to 100 snowmobile visitors a season. That's in addition to the annual Sled for Eternity fundraiser in Dryden, which was canceled. Highway 17 near Dryden was closed for a few hours on Tuesday afternoon due to snowy conditions and a multi-vehicle crash. According to the Oxdrift fire team, the noon-hour collision involved 5 transport trucks and 1 passenger vehicle. 2 people were taken to hospital with minor injuries. OPP remained on the scene while tow trucks removed the vehicles. According to the MTO's 511 maps, the highway between Dryden and Vermilion Bay was closed as a precaution due to the snowy conditions, but it reopened around 3 p.m. Tuesday. Dryden OPP had also issued a warning on social media asking drivers to stay home and avoid any unnecessary travel.
Hello everyone, it's Constable Dela Cruz with Dryden OPP. I'm here to advise everyone that the weather outside is indeed frightful. Those who have plans and are planning to go out on the road are advised to stay at home and go on another day unless it's urgent. The roads are currently slippery and the winds are currently continuously picking up. For highway conditions, please call 501. For emergency, please call 911 for assistance. And for further follow-ups, please follow opp.ca on any of our social media platforms.
It's time now for another short break. When we come back, we'll hear about a proposed new monument to remember the victims of the 1989 Dryden air crash. 35 years after the Air Ontario plane crash near Dryden, work is underway to commemorate the devastating loss of life with a new memorial. The Dryden and District Museum recently received $20,000 in donations towards the project.
It was a traumatic incident, right? So it causes a lot of pain. But I think it's a moment in our city's history that we need to reflect on and recognize some positive points as well. Our city came together quite rapidly to help as many people as possible that day.
Air Ontario Flight 1363 went down in March of 1989. The tragic crash killed 24 of the 69 people on board. Ice and snow on the wings caused the plane to go down less than a minute after takeoff. The disaster resulted in significant changes to Canadian aviation regulations, particularly de-icing protocols. There's already a memorial plaque attached to a large boulder in the forest near the crash site, but museum officials want to create a new accessible monument right in the city of Dryden.
So we want a new monument to recognize the incident itself, those who are impacted, including the survivors, and those who put in any effort that day, and allow people to contemplate and reflect on the incident itself too.
The impetus for a new monument came from the late Garth Twitchell, a retired aviator from southern Ontario who recently passed away. On a trip to Dryden in 2020, Twitchell approached then-Mayor Greg Wilson about creating a more substantial and easier-to-access monument that would also recognize the impact of the crash on Canadian aviation. Twitchell made a $10,000 donation to the project, which was then matched by Wilson and his wife Debbie. A singer-songwriter from northwestern Ontario has been nominated for 3 Juno Awards. Asa Nobby is a member of the Sandy Lake First Nation and grew up in Kaministiquia. The 31-year-old musician made his Juno debut at the award ceremony in Edmonton last year, performing his powerful song, "We Were Here, It's in My Blood." He was also up for a Juno for Contemporary Indigenous Artist of the Year, but did not win. He's nominated again in that same category, along with Songwriter of the Year and Alternative Album of the Year, and he'll be back on stage at the Junos performing a tribute to the late Robbie Robertson. The Juno Awards will be presented March 24th in Halifax. And that's all for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Join us next time for more of the top stories from across the region.